Hey, how's it going, friends? It's your girl Ashkade, and I bet you're wondering what I'm doing over here on my friend Stephanie's channel. Well, we're going to be doing a very special little collab here today. We're going to be talking about some of the issues going on in the fandom right now. So this is a video that we talked about doing for a while, and well, let's just say life happens and a lot of things get in the way, and well, we finally got around to sitting down and doing this, and I'm honestly, I'm excited for it. So how this video is going to work is essentially I am interviewing Stephanie and asking her questions kind of about how this past year has impacted her and what has happened over the course of this year in our community so that we can just get a better idea and a better handle on it all. And I want you all to remember here really fast one thing before we actually jump into this. I'm going to say this loud and clear. Black Lives Matter. We need to support people in our community. If people are asking for better representation, that means they are not getting proper representation. And that is why we are having this discussion, is not only because we have seen pushback from some people, but it's also because we want to see our community grow into a better place. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about making a better place for everyone. All right, so Stephanie, I have some questions for you, and I'm really excited. So here we go. So the first question I have for you is, how has the discussion of race and politics impacted you over the course of this year?
As a person of color, especially as a trans person of color, it is difficult for me to find people who can relate to my experience. The fandom does come across as racially inclusive at a surface level, but race issues tend to take a back seat compared to other political issues or to furry discourse in general.
So Stephanie, why are movements like Black Lives Matter important to our community?
Movements like Black Lives Matter are important for awareness and education. Embracing these movements as a community shows minorities that we care. Although many furries try to use the fandom as a form of escapism, our problems still follow us. Maybe some people are privileged enough to actually have some reality relaxation separation. But for someone like me, my problems do not magically disappear when I hang out on furry spaces. If anything, I have to deal with them even more, and I think that would be the case even if I didn't have my YouTube channel. We can try to wrap the fandom in a bubble, but the outside world will still be there.
So how can we be better allies for each other?
Being a good ally means that you listen, keep an open mind, and accept your own privilege. Although the furry fandom is 80% LGBT, less than 20% of furries are people of color, and barely 10% of furries are trans. Being part of one minority group doesn't mean that you can understand another, so it's important to acknowledge the ways in which your challenges differ. For example, trans people have to deal with gatekeeping that prevents us from accessing medical resources, and we need to be able to amend our government IDs. Being a good ally means that you can accept minority groups that you don't belong to while also allowing them to speak for themselves.
So, Stephanie, what about guest honor positions? I know this is something that, like a lot of people have been talking about online. And, well, I mean, what can conventions do to better encourage diversity?
I think conventions need to suck it up and choose a minority guest of honor every once in a while. I know that the guest of honor is supposed to be someone prominent who will draw a crowd to the convention, but very rarely have I ever even heard of these guest of honor picks anyways. I mean, personally, that marketing is already missing its mark. I guess in this case, conventions need to decide what their priorities are. I mean, it would be great if convention boards were more diverse too. I've seen convention leaders publish these long apologies for how they handled minority issues and how they want to now get some outside perspective. But honestly, it shouldn't even need to come to that. If your convention, or any organization for that matter, is so insular that you need someone completely unaffiliated to come in and fix your problems, I think you just need to recruit more people. All of these steps show minorities that the community actually cares about them. On that note, another way you can do that while also subverting a furry cliche would be to raise money for charities that help marginalized minorities. I've long since learned that whenever a convention says they're raising money for charity, it's almost always an animal charity. These are good causes, but given how hard this year has been, and given that most people don't have much disposable income right now, if any at all, I wish the fandom would start shifting its priorities over to helping people.
Politics have been a huge flashpoint here in the US this past year, and of course, that spills over into our own community. Can you share why it's important to have these discussions, especially within our community?
Humans are social beings, and there is this natural compulsion to discuss and share. Although it varies by person and country, our governments affect everything in our lives. Even as a Canadian, your American politics affects my country too. The most critical political issue in our fandom is human rights, which honestly shouldn't be political, but sadly is. Discussing politics is important for minorities. It doesn't just allow us to easily flag people who are hateful, but it also allows us to share our experiences. It allows us to continue to support each other as a community. Banning this kind of discussion, which is a common policy in furry communities, is a rejection of this experience. It disenfranchises minorities and creates an environment where the privileged can thrive.
Alright, my last question here. So, Stephanie, how do we move forward as a community to help foster a sense of openness and inclusion for everyone?
Although the fandom is inclusive at a surface level, I feel like a lot of the attitudes here are closer to tolerance rather than acceptance. I feel there is a lack of understanding or concern for trans people and people of color right now. In the final months leading up to the American election, I've seen a lot of people come out of the woodwork to decry Donald Trump, with the intention of somehow kicking out the Republicans from the fandom. Honestly, I think this is an ironic waste of time. By all means, declare where you personally stand, draw lines on who you associate with, and lock down your online spaces. But that doesn't remove right-wing furries from the fandom. They already have their own spaces and their own figureheads who hold larger platforms than vocal minorities like myself do. I think the effort being spent on this witch hunt would be much better applied towards making the fandom more inclusive. And while you can technically do both, most people right now are just doing the former, and I wouldn't be surprised if people stop doing that after the election too. The ironic part of this is furries have focused so heavily on positivity and escapism for so long that the fandom is covered in a veil of neutrality. We ban political discussion, refuse to decry discriminatory behavior, and dismiss criticism as mere drama akin to the poodling discourse from years past. Honestly, I think even that topic received more attention from furry YouTubers than Black Lives Matter ever will. I feel like the people who call themselves my allies care more about the political discourse than they do about the minorities who will be most impacted by this election. I wish these people cared even just half this much about minority inclusion in the fandom. I think if they did, they'd realize that everything is not as great as we make it out to be here. I am not the only person frustrated here. Frustration with the fandom's inability to be inclusive and understanding absolutely hit its boiling point this year. Minorities feel like the current fandom spaces and their leaders don't really care about us. We feel like we don't have a place in the fandom unless we carve it out ourselves. And that is what led me to start my channel too. However, I do not want us to further divide ourselves. That's why I focus on visibility and education, and I hope others join the table too. I just want people to care more. Let's focus on specific actions that will make a difference. We should rewrite our policies, prioritize inclusion over neutrality, elevate people so that they have their voices heard, and make an effort to understand minority groups other than our own.
Alright, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me on your channel. Lots of love, everyone. I hope you all have a fabulous day. Goodbye.